Growing up in LA, you don't learn just your ABCs. You get to learn your zip codes. You learn that crossing a single street can be moving from a world that was built for you to a world that ignores you. We think of our identity as something personal, but it's actually a theoretical approach shaped by the concrete we walk on every day. To understand why LA feels so divided, we have to look at intersectionality. It's the idea that our race, class, and gender aren't separate boxes. They kind of overlap to create unique experiences of discrimination or disadvantage. Your neighborhood is the classroom where you learn exactly where you stand in that system. As we move through these neighborhoods, we must pay attention to the atmosphere. It's more than just a vibe, it's a power structure. By recognizing difference in how these spaces are treated by the city, we can begin to see how our sense of belonging was manufactured by the environment. By taking a look at a couple examples, we can really see how these neighborhoods teach us who we really are.
Here in Santa Monica, there's stereotypes that life here is pretty easy, filled with rich people and celebrities. I mean, the clean sidewalks and the green spaces sure make it seem that way. However, there's a bigger story into why that stereotype is played.
But we have to recognize difference. For many, this environment is a luxury they never see. When you grow up here, the environment can actually make the interwoven prejudice faced by others feel invisible. It teaches you that your privilege is just normal, which can make it harder to see the systems of white supremacy that keep this area exclusive. Historically, mainstream social movements were criticized for being white and middle class. They focused on things like the pressure to be a homemaker or glass ceilings in corporate offices. While those are valid struggles, they were often the only struggles highlighted because the people in these neighborhoods had the luxury of not worrying about basic survival. Growing up here socializes you to believe that these are the universal problems of all people, ignoring the deeper intersections of race and class. In the YW Boston article, it's noted that Black women often had to work to keep their families afloat and didn't have the luxury of the homemaker struggle. In Santa Monica, the physical environment, the expensive shops, and gated communities serves as a reminder of who is allowed to belong. For a young person growing up here, the neighborhood teaches you that you are the standard and others are the deviation, which is a core component of how systematic identity is formed. In the article The Social Determinants of Health by Michael Marmot, we see that his research on social determinants shows that the higher the social status, the better the health. In a high resource area like this, the environment literally reduces your stress levels. Your sense of belonging is tied to the fact that the city sees you and provides for you. The status becomes part of your identity. You grow up expecting the world to work for you, which is a massive psychological advantage. The neighborhood shapes an identity of confidence, but can also create a blind spot. If you never see a food desert or an industrial zone, you might assume that everyone has access to the same resources you do. This is how the social determinants of health are hidden behind a veil of privilege. Your sense of belonging is tied to the fact that the city sees you and provides for you, which is a massive advantage in how you move through the world. Finally, Santa Monica teaches the lesson of protection. The heavy presence of private security and the meticulous maintenance of public spaces tell the residents that they are worth protecting. This shapes a child's identity to expect protection from the state rather than fear from it. This is a stark contrast to neighborhoods where systems of discrimination make the presence of authority a source of anxiety rather than safety.
Now look at K-Town, which is a great example of this idea of interconnected identity. Here, there isn't one single identity, but rather a culmination of a lot of different cultures. Growing up in a neighborhood like this teaches you about the synthesis and how to get along with multiple people.
A neighborhood shapes you by either affirming or erasing your parts. In a space as diverse as Koreatown, you learn to avoid oversimplified language early on because you see that people are more than just one label. You see the interconnected nature of cultures, where a street vendor isn't just a worker, but a person navigating language barriers, immigration status, and economic policy all at once. This shapes an identity that is inherently intersectional. Growing up here, your sense of belonging is tied to the community rather than the architecture. The YW Boston text notes that when we recognize difference, we can step beyond our assumptions. In Koreatown, the difference is the point. You see the synthesis of these oppressions, creating the conditions of life, but you also see a synthesis of joy and culture. This shapes a young person to be adaptable and culturally fluent, which is a unique form of identity building. However, the lack of green space and the high pollution levels in dense areas like this also shape your identity. It teaches you that your physical health is a secondary concern to the city's commercial needs. This is a lesson in social determinants of health that you learn through the air you breathe and the lack of places to play. You internalize the ideas that you have to fight for space, which creates an identity rooted in advocacy and collective struggle. Koreatown socializes you to see the world as interwoven. You don't see a race in a vacuum. You see it tied to the wage gap and housing density. This environment demands that you analyze the space you occupy every day. It builds a hyper-awareness of your own identity markers because you are constantly interchanging with others who are also navigating their own complex intersections of race, class, and gender.
Downtown is where you'll see these systems of inequality written in glass and stone. It's where you'll find high-level luxury buildings towering over tent cities like Skid Row. And this isn't just how the way things are. It's a culmination of years of unfair wages and prejudice.
Let's look at the numbers. A white woman makes 78 cents for every dollar a white man makes, but a black woman, facing multiple forms of oppression, make only 64 cents. This neighborhood shows you that gap in real time. It teaches you exactly where the social hierarchy thinks you belong. Downtown LA is a synthesis of oppressions in physical form. We see the intersection of housing, status, race, disability, playing out on every corner. For a young person growing up here, the neighborhood teaches you that the system is something that happens to you, rather than something you're a part of. This shapes an identity that is often reactive. You are always negotiating your place in a space that is constantly changing through gentrification. When a neighborhood lacks basic resources like clean air or quiet streets, it's a form of environmental racism. This shapes a child's identity by telling them their well-being is a disadvantage that the city is willing to overlook. You learn to conceptualize yourself as someone who must navigate around obstacles that others don't even see. This is the interdependent system of disadvantage that the theory of intersectionality warns us about. Intersectionality is essential to combating the interwoven prejudice people face. But in downtown LA, those prejudices are reinforced by the physical layout. The separation of the financial district from Skid Row is a lesson in class and race that you learn by walking the streets. It shapes your identity by showing you the concrete ceiling, the invisible but very real limits on where you are expected to go and what you're expected to achieve based on your identity markers. Ultimately, growing up in a place like downtown LA creates an identity of survivalism. You become an expert at seeing others' points of view because you have to understand the people in power to navigate the world safely. You learn that identity markers do not exist independently of the economy. Your sense of belonging becomes a political act. Claiming space in a city that is trying to price you out or push you out is how you define who you are. By thinking about these places that we talked about, we can start to analyze the spaces that we occupy. Don't just walk through these neighborhoods. Listen to what they're telling you. Are they accessible? Do they show representation of people of color? Or do they erase the experiences of the people living in them to make others feel more comfortable? Intersectionality is meant to be utilized, not just studied. Once you recognize the difference in how these neighborhoods shape us, you have a responsibility to show up for the people in the neighborhoods that don't have your same privileges. As we wrap up, remember that understanding the terminology used in equity work is a useful tool for expanding our knowledge. But the real work is in everyday experiences of the people we pass on the street. We must seek out existing intersectional narratives and listen to the stories that the concrete is trying to tell us. The YW Boston article reminds us to listen and refer to those who live in these intersectional identities every day. We cannot assume that our experience in our own neighborhood is the blueprint for everyone else's life. To build a truly diverse and equitable LA, we have to start by acknowledging that our entry points to the city are not all the same. We can't expect people in different systems of oppression to rally for causes we care about if we do not rally for them. We have to show up at the intersections, whether it's environmental justice in downtown or housing equity in Santa Monica. These issues are interdependent. Your struggle is my struggle, because our identities are shaped by the same city. This is how we progress together, by recognizing these identities and the spaces that shape them. We move from being residents of a city to being neighbors in a community. Your neighborhood shaped who you are today, but now it's our turn to make LA a city that values every overlapping identity marker equally.